Greetings all, Shardvixen. This is take 2. My dog came in, was cleaning himself, and all you could hear was that. Yeah. Alright, so shout out to Arctic Fox. If you like dyeing your hair, their new bleach, please, is awesome. It seals in your split ends. Even though I still have some, they are not as bad as they were. They were so bad, it was like a whole nother halo going on. I'm probably going to dye this again. This is a very peachy pink color. I really wanted more of a pink color, but the problem is my hair is auburn red, so when I bleach it, I get a lot of red hints to it. It's more white down here because I'd already bleached it before. So this new stuff will have to be bleached again in about a couple months to get it more white. So instead, I'll just add more pink to it. I was going to do a black ring, but I decided not to. Anyhow, so I'm going to start a new series. It's called Bits of Me. It's going to be based on images that reflect and remind me of events in my life or memories. Like pets, cars, places I lived, images. I have images that reoccur in my dreams that are from areas that I grew up in. A lot of those areas don't exist anymore, at least not that way. Charcoal. Charcoal wants to visit. Big black lump that he is here. Charcoal. Charcoal. There he is. Look, there he is. Oh, there he is, looking at me. That's it for pet videos for me. Oops. Okay. So I have to talk louder so that this comes out really well because it's so far away from me. I don't have any area right now. Everything's in a state of disarray in my area that I film in my animation area, in my art area. I'm getting it all set up really well so that I can do all that stuff someplace else and then go to the computer. So Bits of Me are going to be just from my viewpoint. I'm going to I have to eliminate people because I have dissociative events in my life, which means things occurred and for whatever reason my brain blocked them out. And people remember things I didn't remember. And if I go on a blog and start talking about these things, I'm going to get nothing but negativity. I also have to be careful. Stop. Also have to be careful because there are people who I pissed off a lot in my past, and I have moved myself away from those people, but they will come back and they will be negative and mean and rotten and say things that I think are mean, negative, rotten. Other people won't. I mean, that's usually how that works. It even works that way now. I'll have a conversation with somebody on Discord, and everybody else will say, he or she is just being truthful, and you shouldn't be so sensitive. And I'll be like, they're being jerks, and then they'll be like, no, you're being a jerk. And then I'll be like, and that's how I just don't need that crap in my life. So people will have aliases, or I will try to downplay any interaction of other people. I'm sure I will say my mother and my father. My father's dead, so I can say whatever the shit I want about the jerk, and nobody's going to come down on me. My mother is still alive, and for the most part, I've forgiven her any of the things that have occurred in our lives. We are not overly close. I am closer to my own children than I am to my mother. I have relatives who still are out there who probably do not want people to hear about their side of it. And I, for the most part, don't have a lot of memories of people who are still alive. I have a lot of memories of my grandmother, my grandfather, my uncles, they're all dead. I have lots of memories of my aunts. They're still alive. So we'll give them, I'll just call them aunts. There'll be aunt 1, 2, 3. Let's see, aunt 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. I got 4 aunts still alive. On one side of the family, and no aunts on the other side of the family. And we'll talk about secrets as they are for me. Some secrets still will cause pain to others. but they'll only be my secrets. So if they have pain, that's their problem. I'm sorry about that ahead of time. Anyway, so I'm going to do this in visual terms. It'll be the interesting thing though about pictures. And I've talked about this before. You can go check out my bubble, which I think is my first or my second vlog. Second vlog. We all live in bubbles, okay? You can call it whatever you want, but we live in a bubble, and our bubble is influenced by variables from the outside and within. It's how our brain grows, how our physical being is, because everything around us affects our communication and how we see the world. So, images, if I was to say tree, everybody think of a tree. We would all have an image of a tree. Some of us might be multiple. For me, it's multiple because I have different trees I enjoy. But the common one that 60% of people will look at are the like little animation ones that have the tree that goes like this, has the little bushies like a cloud, and then a brown trunk, and the tree comes out like that. That's the image of tree. Now, some of us might have more detail. The more artistic you are, the more detail-oriented you are, the more your processing is very into that. Everything has to be in the right place. You might have an actual tree. That puts you outside the norm of how people think. But for the most part, when you are talking to somebody about a tree, this image is going to come up to them in their head, if they're actually actively listening to you. A lot of times, we're not actively listening. We're kind of listening, in the background. And those images don't pop up as well. Just because our brain knows there's not enough time to be constantly doing all this other stuff and then trying to translate what's coming in. For the most part, we usually go, mm-hmm. But if we're trying to share an event, we are listening. So one of my first early images is interesting to me because it shows how much animals, cats in particular, have been a part of my life. Like, I can go through any point in my life and there will be a cat in it, and memories will be surrounded by that cat. So the very first cat that I had was called Mittens. And Mittens was a black little skinny cat, very thin. I have one now that has medium hair. This was the short hair, or what they call a non-hair, because the hair is like just very close. And Mittens had a tuxedo white down and little white feet. Thus called Mittens, I'm guessing. I don't think I named Mittens. My first image in Mittens, I had to have been around 2 years old. And some of the images I have are of the house that we moved into that my father rented after I was born. I think it was because it wasn't because I was born. I think it was because my brother was born and we needed to be, or was coming, and we needed a bigger area because when I was born, my parents lived in an apartment off of Marconi Avenue. I was born in Sacramento, California. If any of you have ever been to Sacramento, it is a very big city. You have central downtown Sacramento that goes along the river. There's a river, and it separates Sacramento and West Sacramento, which is now an actual city. Could not be an actual city now, but when I was young, you had Sacramento, you had West Sacramento, and a river that ran between them, which probably more like this idea. In my brain, I sense direction in my memories, so it always kind of tells me where I am in the world. And in Marconi Avenue runs south to north off of I-5 and, well, not I-5, I-80, Highway 80. I think it's an international 80. And that runs from, like, San Francisco, which would be the end of it, because San Francisco's on a port thing, east. So, Marconi would have been north to south road off of I-80. And it's between, it's as you're going east out of downtown. So, interesting thing, I was having driven down through Marconi Avenue and stuff like that, the one thing I always remember about Marconi Avenue is this office buildings that had tiki heads, big giant wood styled after, the Hawaiian god. But so I'm in a bathtub. It's a pink bathtub, and the faucets are facing are if I was looking south, which now here would be that way, but that's not the image, the feeling I get. I don't feel like I'm sitting that way. I'm not now. If I was sitting that way, then the image would be closer to what I'm thinking of. And you're like, why does it matter? It doesn't. It's just how my brain works. And I'm in the bathtub, and I remember there's bubbles, and I'm playing with something in bubbles, and the cat comes in and walks around the bathtub and then gets in the bathtub with me. I'm like, I didn't think anything of it at the time, but I now know that I haven't. Your memories get an over flavor of what goes on as you grow older. So the image you might have is not a true image. It's an image that has been overlayered by other people telling the same story, or you telling the same story, and then you also adding age to the story. So as a child, the sense I get is just that this was a norm. The cat played in the water with me, and the cat was with me in a lot of things. I have another image of that particular cat, and it's so odd how your perception is when you're small to when you're old. So I those spiral lollipops, the ones that go around like this, the candies, and they got the rainbows in it. I had one, but the image of it is like it's bigger than my head. Like it's really big, and I'm holding it with two hands, and I'm licking it, and the cat is on the other side. Now, I know the cat's on the other side because I see the paws, but I didn't know at the time that the cat was licking the lollipop. That wasn't until I was told later in life that the cat was licking the lollipop. For me, all I have is this huge image that takes over the whole thing of this candy-like thing. And the interesting thing about that is that it makes such a prominent fixture in my head because by the time I was 8, candy wasn't allowed in the house anymore. So I have a lot of early images with candy being a major focus in my life, which kind of makes sense because if a lot of people who are mentally ill have like over the top sugar cravings. Like you could never be exposed to sugar and you still will crave it. I craved sweet things my whole life. Didn't have to be candy, but my mom likes to joke it's because she ate cherry popsicles when she was pregnant. That's all she ate, lots, because she was pregnant during the summer and it was hot. So I came out craving sweet things. Who knows? Because a lot of the baby food supposedly I ate was very much more on the sweet end. My children were the same way for the most part. My son was really into like carrots and sweet potatoes, and my daughter liked bananas and applesauce. She was more probably sweet because one of the very first foods that she actually eat was watermelon. The second one was chocolate donuts, and she demanded those when she was started to eat. Like that's all she wanted to eat. And so sugar for her as well. My son, not so much. His sugar intake came later in life, and then now he has to curb it. Anyhow, so Mittens stayed with me until we moved to our new house. I was 4 or 5 years old, and my dad bought his first house. He's only had 2 that I know of, but the first house he bought was that one, and that was in Roseville, California. It is still there in Roseville, California. I have been by it a couple times, but he sold it when I was in my 20s. The house was supposed to come to me, and then when my father threw me out, he told me that I would get nothing from him, which when he died, I got $1, because apparently that was required. The lawyer said he had to require to give me $1. No one sent me my $1, so they actually, I think it's a bunch of stories, but that's fine. That house was supposed to come to me. That was going to be my house, but, people say things and change their minds. Sad but true. Um, Most of my images of people are going to be I have no problem speaking ill of the dead, um, because I usually couldn't speak ill of them when they were alive. I mean, I probably did. Like I didn't have a close relationship with my father, and there's a lot of very traumatic events that are surrounded around my father. But really, the issue with my father and I was that my father believed that I was someone else's child. He was convinced that he married my mother and she was pregnant, which she was pregnant when they got married. She says that he was the man, and he says it was the man that she converted to Catholicism to. I can't say that word. Anyway, I was born in a Catholic hospital in Sacramento. Used to be off of J Street. I don't know if it's still down there. But Mother Superior and two nuns wrote their signature on my certificate, because my mother was Catholic. She wasn't born Catholic. She did convert in her teens, later teens, young adult, for a gentleman she was dating and planning on marrying. That particular gentleman had a motorcycle accident. At least I think that's what it was that my family told me. And then she was in mourning and whatever. And after, in her mind's eye, after a couple of years, she met my father. And then they started dating, and there's a big whirlwind of that romance of how I saw him from across the way and knew he was the one, and him saying the same thing, and they had similar interests, and they were hanging out and doing stuff. He had just gotten a job with the railroad, so he was pretty well off for that time period, and they got married. But when they got married, they went to Reno to get married, and my mother was 3 months pregnant. So the question always became, did she get married because she was pregnant? And that's the truth of it, because she did that time period. You were supposed to be married if you were pregnant, because you weren't supposed to have sex till you got married. Such a bunch of bull, but that's the way it is. There are people out there that still believe it, and I'm sorry, because I just said that's a bunch of bull, but being a product of two people who probably shouldn't have gotten married, and then also the things that occurred from that one little event is very problematic for me. So I grew up with a firm belief that if you want to get married, you love the person, marry them. Don't marry them because you're pregnant, because there's no need for it. Especially now, there's no need for it. Maybe back then more so, because it would be hard to live with the idea what the social standard was. But the social standard now, there's no real need for that. If you have a religion that says you're not supposed to have sex before you get married, and you have sex, well, you sinned, and that's the way it is. Deal with it. And if you're a firm believer that the best thing you can do for a child is to give them your name, you can give them the name without being married to the person now. I mean, that's not a requirement either. I mean, all those myths that we are told that are the way that things are, they had a reason for when they were created, but they are no longer a reason now. Now, that's my own personal opinion, but that's just how I saw it. And so every moment, from the moment I was born, there are periods of some really nice memories of my father and me, but after a certain age, that ended. And there's reasons for that. My dad was an alcoholic, so that was in between us. I was a female. That was between us. He had a hard time with some things in his life because of women, my mother included, and his next wife after that, his own mother, his stepmother, his grandmother, his sister. So there was a lot of things that went on with that for him too. But getting back to the pets. So I have had, really quick, I had Mittens. Then we had Puff. Puff was a Persian who pretty much was my cat of my youth. Mittens, sadly to say, got killed after we moved to our new house. I am convinced, and was convinced at the time, that there was a person down the street that killed him because he kept getting in their garden, but never could prove it. But I didn't. I found him on the way to school, on the way back from school, at the bus stop. I was always a child that looked at on the ground and was always looking at things. And don't ask me why. I still do it. When I walk, I look everywhere because you just see the most interesting things on the ground. And in that case, I was kindergarten. I want to say kindergarten. And I come off the bus and I was walking and I found my cat. And I had to take my cat home. And it was a very sad event for me. Though other people have said that it wasn't I who found the cat, that I have this clear image of him, but there's other people who have said that they found the cat and brought him home. That's possible. It could be that we never found the cat and I just needed an answer in my head and do it. And the human brain does that. So that's why I'm saying that memories can be very weird. You can have an image of a memory that you remember, and then your brain, because of trauma and other things, or wishful thinking or stuff like that, can over time create the memory as you want to see. So we're all going to take my memories as being as close as possible to truth as they are, but that's the way it is. And there are possibly people who could show up and say, I remembered you, I know who you are, and that's not how that was. And I'm going to tell you, if you show up and make a comment like that, I will just be like, hey, how are you? Nice that you stopped by, and that's great, and that's it. I'm not going to argue with you on it. I have what's in my head, and I'm going to go with it. If it's completely false, based on the rest of the world, I don't really give a shit. But, so Bits of Me is going to go like that. I'm going to take one image, and then I'm going to talk about that image. Anyway, so we had Mittens, we had Puff. Puff died. I didn't get another cat until I was living with my mother. We had a cat named Toy, who was this deformed cat. She had big head and small body. And then one called Nutmeg, who was like a little calico spice. She was so cute and sweet. My mother took both those cats with her when she moved. I'm trying to think. There's a big gap because I was homeless and things going on where I didn't have animals around me. But when my daughter was born, I got her a cat. I had a cat before that. Before, in my late 20s, I had a cat named Bandit. Just a tabby cat with the stripes. His eyes were black, so I named him Bandit. He was given to me by my daughter's father. Before that, I had 3 little black kittens that were called Puma, Puka, and Peekaboo. Peekaboo and Puka I found homes for, and Puma was mine, but he died of leukemia before I went in, after I came out of, no, after I went to the military. So, sorry, it's kind of phasey there. And then before that, I had Mystic and Root Beer, who was with my first big love. I think I was 1921. I got Mystic while I worked for the California Conservation Corps, and Root Beer came in with a friend of mine that we all lived together. And so Nutmeg to Mystic, that's where I didn't have any pets. So that would have been 17, 18, no, let's see, 19 to 22, I guess. All right, so that's it. A little long. I'll trim it, I'm sure. You guys have to let me know if you like the bits of me. They're going to be like a weird rambly thing because I'll take an image and we'll just see where it splices out. Because if you don't like it, I can always make them private and you don't have to watch them. But I'm trying to put stuff that's in here somewhere else. Anyway, I will catch you all on the flip side. I am out of here. Peace.